everybody, welcome to another episode of A Piece of Ash. This is the July show where I'll be taking your questions from June and answering them as best I can. So in this show, what usually happens is I answer your questions that you've asked on SurveyMonkey. If you want to get a question in, the best way to do it is go as quick as you can, hit the link in the video description below, and fire away that question, hopefully a new one. I usually get through 30 to 40 questions in any given hour that I sit and talk. So if I don't get to the one that you asked this month, just watch the show and hopefully you can get your question through next month. While we sit and chat, I usually do some hobbying. So today I am working on some barbarians and a thief for Frostgrave. I'm working on some new stuff because I'm planning a new Frostgrave campaign. And I thought it would be cool to use some of the actual Osprey licensed miniatures with North Star Hobbies. So these are a couple of the North Star Barbarian and Thief pack. And then this was a Reaper Barbarian that Mike gave me, and I liked him, so I wanted to paint him too. He's the one that looks like he's going to be really cold though, because he's mostly naked, whereas the other Barbarian, the Frostgrave Barbarian and Thief, are both like bundled up against the cold, which is pretty cool. So let's jump right in, ask some questions, and get talking. So CJ Phoenix asks, hey Ash, I am currently painting a Skitarii army, but the robes are killing me. Any tips on painting robes that doesn't take hours per model? Well, my biggest thing with doing any kind of like roby surface, any kind of surface where things are going to go and be mostly that color. So like for Skitarii, there's a lot of those robes. Those robes are kind of all over the place. And there's probably less surface area that's metallic, like arms and legs, than there is surface area that's robes overall in the model. So what I would do is I would actually just go the opposite way to tradition. Most models you'll paint dark to light. That's kind of like the traditional way of model painting. Not everybody does this. So for instance, these miniatures are all primed white. And then I painted them a lighter tone, and then I washed them down a darker tone. But you could do that right from the get-go with Skitarii. So you could just paint the whole miniature with an airbrush, or even with just a rattle can of spray paint, a lighter red, like your highlight red. So if you could find an equivalent of, let's say, what am I using right now? Mephiston red or something like that, if that's the highlight tone you want to have them at, then prime them something around that tone. And then wash them darker. So wash them with a deep brown, and you'll save a whole bunch of time because the wash should do the majority of the work. And if you do go back up and highlight them, you can probably just highlight them with the original base tone with that Mephiston red. Give them a single shade of highlight, nice and thinned down, about the consistency of melted ice cream. And you're one and done. So you're not having to highlight over and over again. You're letting the transition created by the wash do most of the highlighting, and you're just giving it a nice top coat highlight when you're finished. That would be my recommendation, to do it in 2 steps. Start light, go dark. Ben Howard asks, congrats on 1 year. What's your favorite DC hero and villain? And what do you look forward to painting up in the Batman miniatures game? Can't wait for those battle reports. Get them going ASAP, please. So, I'll be honest, most of the DC and Marvel heroes that I like aren't superheroes. They're usually either the anti-heroes or they're the superheroes that kind of became superheroes after being villains. So like for Marvel, I love the Punisher. I love him because he's in no way a good guy. Like he gets his own books, but he's an incredibly traumatized and damaged person. And while he might get, I think, emotional satisfaction from what he does, I don't even think he likes what he does. I think it's a compulsion, and there's something fascinating about that. But if I was to pick my favorite DC character, it probably actually wouldn't be like an actual DC character. It would probably be like a Vertigo character. And it would be someone like, I don't know, Swamp Thing, or, because I love the Alan Moore Swamp Thing. Sandman's an obvious one. I actually was never really into Sandman. I like the spin-offs for Sandman more than I actually liked Sandman, I think. You know, but I thought Sandman was a little too, I don't know, hopeless and sad at times. And even though some of the other comics were even sadder, I liked their stories, I think, and they had more compelling characters. Because Dream is just not a compelling character to me. He's too busy trying to figure out who he is to be compelling. And I liked lots of other comics too. I mean, there's like, you know, the classic sort of like craziness that is Lobo, who is a fantastic, like archetypal sort of like villainous good guy. So, you know, the anti-hero, that's a great fun read. stuff like that. Like, I was never super into actual superheroes. Like, I never liked Spider-Man. I never really liked Batman even. He was never really a big a favorite of mine. He's better than most because he's just a regular guy. So, like, I enjoy that. He's not a mutant or not, like, any kind of, I guess, extraordinarily powered individual. He's just a dude that has lots of money and a vendetta. And in a lot of ways, he's as emotionally damaged as someone like Punisher is. Like, he's compelled to do what he does. He doesn't necessarily even want to be doing what he does. He just feels like he has to. Like, he has this, like, moral obligation to clean up the city that killed his parents. So that's compelling. I enjoy that. But I'm not necessarily a huge villains and heroes fan, which is why I'm painting up Cops, the law, for Batman right now. Next up, Crownblade asks, hey Ash, will you ever play some Warhammer Quest, new edition or old? I've been thinking about doing the old edition of Warhammer Quest when the new one came out, and actually, the only thing that really is a barrier to me doing it is I got tons of projects on the go, and two is just cost. Like, I can bring in a whole other skirmish game, or I can bring in Warhammer Quest. And I'll probably get to Warhammer Quest eventually, but it didn't jump out and say I had to buy it to me initially, and so I didn't. And then I've got people in, just my like circle of friends and other hobbyists who are working on Warhammer Quest anyway, so I'll probably just end up playing it when they bring it in. Mike, who you've seen in some of my videos, my Kings of War videos, has been painting up a Warhammer Quest and was super keen to come in and play some games and shoot some videos of it. So I was like, yeah, for sure. So when he gets that done, you'll probably see more Kings of War with his Abyssals, and also some, he's super jazzed about Guild Ball right now too, so some Guild Ball and some Warhammer Quest. But at the it's basically just like, I have so many other projects that $200 could have a huge impact on, or I could bring in one, little mini game that I'm not averse to playing it, but like it's self-contained, you know what I mean? It's just one game. Can't really go outside the lines with it. The models are super cool though. I'd love to paint the models. Almost, but not entirely, unlike Sigmar, asks, I'm not greatly excited about 40k anymore. I get the impression that you're not either. What action or direction taken by GW to reinvigorate my interest in 40k? What do you wish they'd do? I love 40k. I'll be honest, I think the problems that I'm having with 40k right now are mostly keeping up with it. 40k is a very dense game right now because there's so much to it, and stuff keeps coming out for it that makes the game more complicated, basically. There's more combos, there's more things to remember that you can do, there's more things to remember that your opponent can do, and it's just not my speed, really, like with all the other games I play. So I find 40k to be, I guess, at least locally here in Ontario, it's played one of two ways. It's either played super casually, where people get together. I find this is the same mindset that people play Horus Heresy in. People get together because they're super excited about their collections, they want to put them on the table, hang out together and play some games, and that's fine. And that's really where my speed's at with 40k right now. And then there's the other half where it's make the best army that you can and try and figure out the best combinations in the current rules, and play the game in a very strict, regimented, competitive format way. And I'm not as interested in that because the formats themselves typically are less immersive. There's a lot of button pushing and running around, but there's not a lot of narrative being created out of that. Like, and the missions themselves aren't like a story, like defend a place or go and achieve a thing. It's usually round by round, you're pushing a button or you're standing in a place or you're killing something random. And so they feel more like games of Call of Duty than they do like a miniature game to me. And so it's not that I don't enjoy it, it's just that most of the people that I play with want to play it one of two ways. And then the other half of that is that most people I play with, I'm one of the few people probably that will play anything. And so when people come in, they want to play games they don't get to play as often. They can probably play 40k all the time where they are, but playing This Is Not a Test or Frostgrave or Blood Bowl or Mordheim is far less common to be able to do that for the average person that comes to see me, and so they're usually more jazzed to play something they don't play as often. So I think it's less to do with the fact that I'm not jazzed about 40k, it's that there's so much other stuff out there, and people are excited to have the opportunity to play it, so I tend to play that stuff more. And that ends up being what you guys see. Potato's Gonna Potato asks, why sorry, Wu-Tang Clan or Bone Thugs and Harmony? Obviously the Wu-Tang Clan. I got nothing against the jams and the slow jams that the Bone Thugs put together, but I'll tell you right now that I am a lot more, I would say, a lot more into music of a strange and lyrical variety that talks about uncommon things like Shaolin shadowboxing, and the various ways in which you could I don't know, do away with someone with kung fu, than I am about the sort of like slow jam sexy times that Bone Thugs typically put together. There's a time and place for the Bone Thugs, but the Wu-Tang would be a lot more commonly on my 8-track, if you will. Neo-Terran Dollary Dues says, Dollary Dues, that's a joke that if you haven't watched The Simpsons, you don't know. Which Infinity faction would you choose to live under? Pano, Yuching, State Empire, or Dawn Ariadna? Well, you didn't even give me the Nomads as a choice, and I'd probably be down with the Nomads because they're all about personal freedoms and living in their giant space jalopies, doing whatever work comes here and there, and living their lives as free folk. So I'd probably be down with the Nomads. They get into some weird stuff, but mostly they just want to be left alone and have free commerce and free trade and act as a go-between between everybody else and make sure everybody else gets along. So I think that's where I'd be at with the Bromads. Yeah, that seems like more my jam, more my speed. Whoop. Oh, that just completely went away. We went back a bunch of questions real fast. Because SurveyMonkey is weird. Number 7. Holy Rolling Dice Ashman. They ask, I'm working on a superhero miniature game. Would you like to be willing to look it over? You're someone whose opinion I value and would like to know your thoughts on it. Love your show. I'll look at anything. The one thing I will say right now, though, is I'm currently turning down projects until the fall because my backlog of like to-do stuff is so big that I can't say yes to anything and have the time to do it right now in any reasonable amount of time. So I'm actually saying no at this point, which is a good problem to have. But I do feel a little bit bad because there's lots of cool stuff coming out, and I want to get through everything I've committed to doing, and there's only one me. And there's only so much time in the day for me to do all these things. And so there's had to be kind of a cutoff point, and fall will be when I'm sort of looking at bringing stuff that's not currently in the queue in again. So I'll obviously have a look at it, absolutely. I can't promise anything other than just sort of like, hey, look, I'll look through this and check it out, just because of the amount of time I've got doing current projects. Mike P asks, 11 is not a test. Any other plans for the game in the future? Well, I've got my ongoing thing with Jay that I'm working on. There's actually a fella coming in a week or two to do some more. This is not a test, with a separate sort of like storyline from what I'm doing with the Enclave and Jay's Mutants, Napoleon and Swineland. And then I filmed a Let's Play for it finally. Although it was kind of the original Let's Play. The first episode of Nickel City Stories was kind of where I got the idea for Let's Plays from. I did an official using their like Joey's actual models Let's Play with Jay a few weeks ago, and you will see that soon. So lots going on there, and lots coming up in the future. Conductor asks, have you played any superhero minigames like Pulp City or Super System? Any chance we'd see you try one out? There's a very good chance you'll see me trying Pulp City in the near future, and that's all I'll say about that. Super System, I've got a buddy who's played it in the past. I don't know whether or not I'll play it in the future, but anything's possible. 13-Eyed Rat asks, hey Ash, do you prefer a simple or more complicated rule set? Also, it's my birthday this month. Thanks for all the content. More simple or more complicated? I think, like lots of things, this is going to be like a half answer, is it depends on my mood and what I'm doing, and the scale of the game, especially the scale of the game. So for instance, when I'm playing large set piece games, like company level games, you're talking 30 to 50 models a side, I prefer medium density rule sets. I like to be able to feel like I know what the guy one-to-one is doing on the ground, but I don't need to know, everything about him. I don't need to know how many bullets are in his gun. how long it's been since he's eaten. There's certain details we can leave out from the immersion in that experience that I just don't care about. And the effect that they have on the game. I just don't care about those. Because I'm at a company level, I'm high enough in the air, basically, command-wise, that I more care about what's happening tactically. Whereas, if we're talking about games with like 5 or 10 models, I do sort of care about those things. I like thinking about what the motivations are for my warbands in Frostgrave, or my warbands in Mordheim. I think the great joy of those games is that they give you a certain amount of attachment to those characters. I think you guys even feel a certain amount of attachment to those characters. And so you can have more rules for what happens when they die, and how they interact when they fight each other, and bits and pieces like their equipment, and how many shots they even have left in their guns. And I think that's completely appropriate. And so it depends on those two things. I think the scale and the mood is what I really appreciate. But even in skirmish games, I don't like rules that are too complex and too dense. I don't want to play an RPG. I want to play an RPG light. I think Mordheim, Frostgrave, this is not a test, or just the right amount of like customization and detail versus gameplay and sort of like rule density, where you could teach them easily to other people. And that's the primary reason, actually, is that the more complicated a game is, the harder it is to teach and the more likely it is to scare people off. And so I like games that I know at the end of the day are mostly just sort of like light and fun, and that I can teach people to play and learn to play myself without it being too much of a brain drain. And I'll be honest, I do become turned off of games when they become too dense. So for instance, at certain stages when I've been playing War Machine, I've found it almost exhausting to play because there's been so much to keep track of, not on my half of the board. I might know what everything I have does, or not, but on my opponent's half of the board. And playing that game, I think, satisfyingly for both players, even just to give someone a good game who's a better player than you really have to know what's going on and know what stuff is. And that's compounded by how much new stuff gets released, and additional rules layers like the tier system and all the stuff that was in 2nd edition War Machine. All the rules for Steamroller, all that stuff where you're adding layers of complexity and it's just creating more fault points where I might misunderstand something. And so those games, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that that's not for me, right? That can be a thing that loses me as an audience over time if I just feel like I'm on a treadmill, basically keeping up with my understanding of what's even going on in the game. I like being able to look at a game and know what's happening without having to read a manual every 5 or 10 minutes. You've got an Ash that won't quit asks, you've won 2nd prize in a beauty contest. You win a 2,000 point 40k army and a 2,000 point Warhammer Fantasy army you don't already have. What armies would I pick and why? Well, 40k. See, at some point in my life, I've made almost every 40k army, and so that's kind of a tricky question for me. I guess I'd have to say the Mechanicum and maybe the Knights, because I have the beginnings of a Knight army. I have 2 Knights that are sub-assembly, but not built or primed yet. And I've never painted any of the Mechanicus minis. So that would probably be my answer, mostly because I've never built or painted them before. Not for any other reason. I'd like to build models I haven't built before. They're pretty models. So chances are that would be my 40k answer. And for fantasy, the same sort of caveat applies. I've built almost every fantasy army at some point. So probably, I'd say probably the Khorne stuff, what are they called in Age of Sigmar now? The blood chosen-y blood guys. The guys that come in the starter set. I don't remember their name right now. Those guys. But even to make them into a regular fantasy army, because the miniatures are gorgeous, I think those models are worthy of painting, and I have half the starter set that I may paint at some point to do, because they are fantastic Chaos miniatures, and even just doing them for Warhammer Quest or something like that, or as troops for their game, using them for Kings of War maybe too. Those would be my choices. The Captain asks, hey Ash, will Steve ever come back on the channel? We need to know that the bromance continues. I've answered this question a lot, but I imagine that Steve is a lot like he was when we worked together, and it's that when Steve is not filming at work, he's not playing games, or he's especially not playing games on camera. And when I'm not with my kids, I'm playing games on camera. So when Steve and I hang out, it's much more likely to be to go see a movie or something like that than it would be to play miniature games. Mostly due to the fact that both those things would be something we'd want to break from. So I'm sure you'll see Steve at some point, but I don't know if it'll be playing games. He might just drop by to say hi someday, and you'll see him again. But yeah, it's mostly due to the fact that he does this for work, and I do this to help support my family when I'm not at my real day job, which is being a dad. So you're probably not going to see it caught on camera too often, mostly because, when we have free time, we're spending it doing free time things like drinking beer. Ty asks, any plans to do narrative Infinity in the future? Well, the scuttlebutt is that the Acheron Falls expansion will be the redux of the rules for the Spec Ops for Infinity, and chances are that is when you'll see any kind of story-driven stuff. I am doing some new skirmish scale stuff for Infinity that may have a story-driven element in the future. But for right now, it's primarily being used to help newer players to Infinity kind of get their grips on the rules and play some smaller, faster games and just challenge people that have been playing the game a lot to play the game a bit differently. So I don't know that that's going to be driven by a story, but I would like to do some stuff like that in the future. I just don't know when. Gold Leader asks, will we get to see your zombie game this year? I've been so curious to see what you created. Love the channel. Keep the great work. Short answer, yes. Long answer, yes. You're not the only ones bugging me about this. My buddy Jason DeRush, who you guys have seen before playing This Is Not a Test, and who helped me set up the co-op and built all the fixtures, including the table I'm currently sitting at. When he found out about my zombie game, asked to see a copy of it, and then proceeded to paint like 30 or 40 hassle-free minis for it. So he's really jonesing to play it because there's a ton of stuff that he's painted specifically for that game that he's sitting on right now, and he's still painting more stuff for it too. So expect to, yes, see us play it relatively soon because I owe him some games, and I do want to get back to it. It's, again, I said this earlier with projects. I have so many sort of like projects on the go and commitments that I'd like to keep that getting to my own stuff has just kept getting backburned and backburned and backburned. So we will get there. Pretty much everything's done to show you guys the game. It's just a matter of when do I actually film it around all the other things I'm committed to filming for people. So we will see that. TBD, watch the space. House Escher's hairspray supplier asks, what? Hey Ash, if GW said you could re-release a discontinued game with full backing or bring out an entirely new game, what would you pick and why? Keep the great work. So an entirely new game or bring back a classic game, what would I pick and why? It's a very good question. See the problem that a guy like me has asking that question is it wouldn't necessarily be based on the hobbyist in me. It would be based on other things. And there's games the hobbyist in me would love to see come back, but I know have certain financial limitations, which means I know that even if they came back, they wouldn't stay back for very long. And then there's the hobbyist in me that goes, but this would be so cool, they should do this. So I don't, that's an interesting question. Or a new game. Maybe I'm best just sticking to a new game. Well, a bunch of like the ideas that I thought would be super cool for new games, they've kind of done recently. Like they did that Knights Renegade box, where they brought out the two-player sort of like game with two knights. I thought that if they were going to do a new version of Apocalypse, it should just be all big stuff. Like, don't even have infantry in it. And if you do have infantry, just have them on trays or have them just get scooped up. Have them be almost like markers than guys, because keeping track of infantry in that scale of a game would be hard. And what I would say is just have people have an excuse to use all their big toys. So their Titans and their Knights and bits and pieces, and make a game that's just purely based on that. How do you pilot your big mech the best? And then give it some kind of a campaign system. You know, let them learn skills and abilities, suffer injuries, all that good stuff, but do it in 28 mil, because tons of people own these models now. And you can have a low model count skirmish game that's still giant, huge, crazy, cool models. So doing something like that, doing a progressive, story-driven or encounter-driven game, it's like, you can do it like Battlefield Gothic and have it be part of some set-piece war where, you know, squadrons of Knight households are just being dumped into a war zone, and it's this huge, ongoing, never-ending sort of conflict between engines that is just bigger and bigger and bigger. So you have like your little squadron of 3 knights, and they live, they die, they love, and they play games against other knights in a big ruined city. That'd be super cool. And the models already exist. You really just need to make the rules to do it with, and it would be super easy to do. Guerrilla asks, congrats on passing the 1-year mark. Have you thought about developing the GMG brand, and what plans do you have in the future for the channel? As far as the brand goes, I don't think there's a brand. I don't think there's much else to do developing the brands. I mean, it's an indie sort of radio station for miniature games, right? You get to see stuff, hopefully, here that people wouldn't take the time to make anywhere else, because it's not really chasing views. It's more just being made because it's interesting and unique, and it's worthwhile to show it to you guys. And if it gets any views, it's worth doing, as opposed to trying to be the top viewed, I get the most subscribers from it thing on YouTube. And as far as that goes, I mean, that's really just time. Like, there's nothing really to do to develop it. It's just you have to be that and do that and continue to make those things, and that just continues over time. Outside of that, what do I want to develop? Well, I'd like to keep building relationships with different companies. Got great working relationships with a bunch of companies now that hopefully are mutually beneficial. I mean, they've been great for us. I hope it's been great for them. And just continue just sort of pushing that forwards. I don't really know. I mean, this is all sort of like, I'm not saying made up as I go along, but I'm just kind of going the leaf on the wind idea. I'm going where the wind blows, and that means that I continue making stuff. I'm not really pushing to be anything or do anything, and I think that's helping to keep this stuff interesting and fresh, because I'm not being pigeonholed into any kind of like one type of content, or getting too like bogged down in routine. And I think that's what's great, is that I can just kind of react to what's new and exciting and where the market is, and make new video every week and make something different, unique, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. So I don't think, put it this way, if the strategy is the current sort of like plan for Guerrilla Miniature Games, which is continue showing people stuff they haven't seen before, try and make it to the highest quality I can, continue to improve the quality, then we're going to hold that strategy, and then we're just going to insert new topics into it, basically. The one thing I would like to do is improve a bit of the equipment that we have. I have found that as we've brought more people in, having like a single wireless mic pack doesn't really work. We need to have more mics. Even just getting like a directional or a drop-down mic or a boom mic or something like that would help. And how I do that, I'm not really sure how I'm going to do it yet, but that's a thing that would continue to push forward our capability of doing stuff. Owen's really wanted to do some different types of games. Like, he's been really excited about doing things like RPG sessions and stuff like that. And I think that'd be super fun to do, but again, to do it, if I want to do it, I want to do it right. And then technology becomes an issue where like we'd want to have the proper miking for everybody so you can hear everybody properly, and that would mean something like a boom mic, which again is an additional expense, and yada yada yada. So boring details, but that's how we would be able to develop the brand sort of internally, the quality internally of those products, making the product of us making videos collectively as a group better, is just by kind of enhancing what our capabilities are here at the studio. And that means cost and expenditure and new equipment and stuff like that. Machine Spirit asks, I've heard rumors that Demon Primarchs are coming to 40k, beginning with Manx the Reds. I think this may be a pretend of the return of the Loyalist Primarchs, the ones that are alive anyway, too. Maybe. Like, anything's possible, man. They blew up the old world. I would not be surprised by anything. And there's already Loyalist Primarchs and Trader Primarchs in what's it called, 30k. So I don't see why not. I would say that's the kind of big cool miniature that GW would love to sell and lots of people would love to buy. So never ever say never. I mean, chances are someday we'll even see a miniature of the Emperor in 30k at least, and maybe even a miniature of the Golden Throne. I would say that given the certainty that all things are possible over an infinite amount of time, we will most definitely see all of those things as time moves forward. Because guaranteed, if some of you are excited to buy it, then someone at Games Workshop is talking about making it, and eventually they will get there. Eric's asks 2 questions. Are you ever going to play Sister Sigmar in Mordheim? The answer is yes. And is there any chance of seeing Inquisitor, the 54mm version? I do have a lot of 54mm Inquisitor figs. The problem with that is terrain. is by effectively doubling the scale of the miniature, you have to double the scale of the terrain. What I don't have is a whole bunch of 54mm terrain. So if you saw me play Inquisitor, and I've actually had plans to do that for some time, more likely than not, we'd play it in 28mm, just so that we could use all of our existing terrain. Because there's too much cool terrain out there to want to have to completely, have a budget for new terrain, basically. And it would be relatively easy to do. And then your model selection is even bigger too. So the classic miniatures are great, and I'd probably paint them up and bring them to show you guys when and if I film some Inquisitor stuff for Throwback Thursday. But I wouldn't. It's unlikely that I would actually play the game in that scale, specifically because it would limit, where we could have the encounters and stuff like that. Because the whole thing with Inquisitor is it's an RPG, right? So your games of Inquisitor are the action sequences in any RPG, and that means that weeks and months can go by in between sessions, and you could be on whole different planets. So you're not just going to have necessarily your whole Inquisitor campaign take place in one sort of setting. And having more terrain is obviously then going to be better than having less terrain, because your campaign has the options to go all kinds of different places and do all kinds of different things. There's my short story long. Wee Jock Pooping McPlop asks, it just get weirder and weirder. G'day Ash, do you think in his spare time Zinch likes dressing up in a rat costume? If so, do you think his smelly brother decided to crash his party by wearing the same costume? If so, do I think Nurgle would show up wearing a rat costume and Zinch wore a rat costume? Well, there's the idea that the Horn God in Chaos, or in the Skaven sort of like mythology, is just one of the other Chaos Gods. And all of the Chaos Gods are portrayed by the Horn God. They're just facets of the different Chaos Gods. Because like Clan Pestilence is clearly, worshipping Nurgle. Clan Skyr is kind of clearly worshipping Zinch and building things. And so there's a bit of a transference. You kind of assume that the Skaven are all just worshipping the regular Chaos Gods, and the Great Horn Rat is just some kind of huge demon prince that they're all worshipping. So yes, and I do think that Nurgle would crash Zinch's party because he's a fun guy and he does fun things. I imagine Nurgle is kind of like the class clown of the Chaos Gods. He's, Grandfather Nurgle, he's a relatively happy guy. He doesn't take himself too seriously. He's not into looking in the mirror like Slaanesh is. He's not into being brooding and, anarchic like Khorne is. And he's not as sort of like scheming and conniving as Zinch is. He's just doing his own thing and he's happy and he's having a good time. He wants to make sure other people have a good time too, while they develop terrible diseases and slowly decay into pus. Brofarius asks, Ash, do you think the Emperor and his loyalist Primarchs will return as part of the progression of 40k universe? P.S. The Hydra has many heads, bro. I could see that happening if they did some kind of an end times sort of vibe thing for 40k. And there's a lot of rumors kicking around right now. That's what's happening, this whole Hour of the Wolf thing. Russ potentially coming back to lead the Space Wolves. Come just flying out of the warp, telling everybody the end times are here and the Demon Primarchs are back. But as with all things, we shall see. If it happens, I don't think it'll happen this summer. I think it'll happen next summer, because this summer seems to be all about the Age of Sigmar. And if it's going to come to pass, it's very likely it comes to pass either over the fall or winter, maybe for Christmas, or it comes out next year entirely. So stay posted though, because who knows? GW did blow up the old world. Bromegon asks, happy anniversary, Guerrilla Miniature Games. What's been the biggest surprise hit and surprise flop from all the content you've made? Anything you wish you knew a year ago? Surprise hits. Well, I think everyone was kind of blown away with how big Frostgrave got. I mean, it's a great game. It's a fantastic game, but it's very much outside of the current gaming zeitgeist. It's not a competitively played game. It has no ranks and tournaments. There's no right and wrong way to play it. It's very much play the way you want with the models you want. And that kind of flies in the face of what most big mainstream miniature games are doing right now. So it doing as well as it did, the video blowing up, everybody being super excited about it, was kind of a surprise. I knew it was going to be fun, but I'd played tons of fun skirmish miniature games before, and I'd never seen like a set of videos like that blow up the way they did. So that was a bit of a surprise. What was a surprise? Was there anything that was a surprise flop that I really liked that didn't do very well? I don't know. It's hard. I don't think anything's been a flop. I'll be honest. I'm a bit surprised that Malifaux is not doing better than it was. I mean, Malifaux is still a popular game. I see it in lots of stores, but the videos don't necessarily do as well as even other similarly sized miniature games. Even newer games like Guild Ball are getting as many, if not more, views than Malifaux's, which I found kind of interesting. And then what was very interesting was I didn't think doing the Let's Play for Malifaux was going to get a lot of views, and then it did. It got like 2,000 views in the first day, whereas the average Malifaux video was barely breaking like 1,000 views in the first day. And that was surprising to me because what it seemed like was people who didn't play Malifaux were going and watching that video to learn more about Malifaux, which I guess says something about the market penetration level of Malifaux, that there was enough interest there of people that couldn't really understand what was going on, that a video showing how to play did better than a standard sort of gameplay video in that gaming system. So that's kind of a surprise. That's really the most surprising thing I think that's happened so far, was just how big that blew up. That Let's Play video did really, really well. Yeah, that's it. Goldman822 asks, hey Ash, when can we see some more Frostgrave, and did you buy into the Kickstarter? Keep up the great work, happy wargaming. I did not buy into the Kickstarter. I tend to buy things from my friendly local gaming store when I can, so I don't tend to buy any kind of like pre-crowdfunding stuff. And I know you can buy from certain online retailers and local UK retailers the Kickstarter directly from them, but my local retailer didn't have access to the Kickstarter, so I didn't do it. But yeah, no, the models look super cool and they're really neat, but I tend to try and avoid that so I can give the money to people that are my local hobby champions. And you will see more Frostgrave today when this goes up. You will actually see a Frostgrave video going up at the same time as this. So go check my playlist because there's Frostgrave on it right now. We're playing some Dark Alchemy. The Noob Painter asks, as someone who's new to the channel, can you explain who Clarence is and why do we all love him? Okay, explaining Clarence is difficult without going way back in the way back machine. So Clarence and I met each other probably in the very late 90s, probably in 98 or 99. And we met playing in a gaming store. And we've played 40K together for probably close to 20 years. And lots of other miniature games, just miniature games in general together. And then in 2003, when I was opening a store at the Fairview Mall in Toronto for Games Workshop, I hired Clarence to work for me there, and he worked with me for another 8 years. And so we worked together at Workshop for like 8 years. And then we've been friends like just that whole time. So that's my personal history with Clarence. And then Clarence came on and did some videos with me at Mini Wargaming when I was working there. And things people mostly don't know about Clarence is, one, Clarence is a teacher. So the reason he's only very occasionally on my videos once a year is because he's teaching in Korea. And before that, he was teaching in Kingfisher Lake, Ontario, which is like a fly-in community in Ontario. And that means that he's very rarely actually able to get out and play games, which is why we usually play a whole bunch of games when he can come down. But people love him because he's a teacher, and I think, and because he's actually worked for a miniature company before, and those two things make for someone who's just really, really good on camera, of delivering, of just a really engaging sort of like watching playing a game, because he's great at explaining his motivations as to why he's doing things. He's a teacher, right? So he's great at getting people to understand why he's doing what he's doing. He's super comfortable just speaking in public in general because of that. And he's got lots of charisma. He spent almost a decade selling toy soldiers with me. So talking about toy soldiers is something that comes super natural to him, on top of being a great teacher and all the other stuff that he's just great at. So he's just a super personable guy too. He's probably the nicest guy that'll ever beat you in a game. So yeah, that's Clarence. If you want to watch any of my games with him, if you're watching this, the noob painter, to figure out who he is, you can go watch my Let's Play on Kings of War. Clarence is in that one, and you'll get, I think, a best idea of what he's like and what he does, and that should be a great example of Clarence on camera. Saiyan Chris asks, have you had a chance to look at the Horizon Wars game? I did a Let's Play on it this month. Oliver asks, hey Ash, I love the show. Do you think GW will Age of Sigmar 540K or streamline anyway? Cheers. I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. The best thing about HeroQuest, if you haven't watched that video, it's amazing, asks, please could you disclose the brand and model of both camera and clip-on microphone that you use and recommend any other essentials for someone wishing to make decent quality battle reports? So I shoot on a Canon XA25, and I have a Sennheiser 800 series mic that I'm wearing right now. There's no real secrets about that. It's the same stuff they use in mini wargaming, and most everything you've ever seen shot on Pornhub. So it's like the standard high-end professional level camcorder, and it will do pretty much whatever you want. But that being said, to produce what I produce, much more important than the mic and the camera is actually the lighting. Go get yourself some shop lights and some daylight bulbs, and 90% of what I shoot on this camera you could just as easily shoot on a $300 Canon Vixia handheld, just by not panning around a whole bunch, because the sensor size is a lot smaller. It's a lot more subject to movement than a camera like this is, and by just lining up your shots, shooting and cutting between every shot that you take. So I wouldn't recommend that you need something like this unless you're going to be doing what I'm doing and doing a variety of things at different ranges and speeds and movements. If you're just going to be shooting battle reports, then a little Canon Vixia, it'll be fine. Get one with internal memory instead of on cards, because the transfer is better onto the internal memory. Usually you don't get any errors or any objects or artifacts appearing on the film due to the transfer onto the card. And yeah, that would be my recommendation. Dear Tanti Kate asks, would you take part in a one-session paint-off? Explanation, everyone takes one mini, has to finish the mini in one session. The resulting mini can be raffled off for a benefit or charity. Sure, yeah, I'll do that. Sounds like a plan. Doug asks, has there ever been a new edition or expansion for a game which has killed your interest in it, or a game which has over time evolved from something you enjoy to something you don't, or vice versa? I think I talked earlier a little bit about that, about game bloat, where games get too big and the focus becomes on being able to memorize what everything in the whole game can do, and that's what kills it off for you. That's what killed my interest in Magic the Gathering when I was a teenager. I had zero, like, after a couple of expansions and that mindset started to kick in with people of like there was a best way to play the game, and it got very like I kill you in like 3 or 4 moves, that totally killed my interest in it. I was just like, oh, okay, this was fun when it was me and my friends shuffling like our randomly bought pre-purchased decks and just playing a game and being like, ooh, that card you have is so good, but without any like strategy in our deck building. That was super fun. But then as soon as it became about like who could own the most expensive best cards, I was like, I'm out, sorry, peace, not interested, this isn't for me, I'm gone. And that was like 20 years ago. And I think the last time I played Magic, it was because a bunch of my buddies bought like a bunch of like commons and uncommons for like a couple dollars on eBay, and literally shuffled a deck of like 1,500 cards, including lands, in the middle of a table at a party, and we all just sat around drinking beer and playing like random, you draw 50 random cards, shuffle them into a deck, and then play Magic and see who can win. And that was a great time. That was it, because it's a fantastic game, right? Like there's a reason it's been around for 20 years, and it is the dominating force in the industry that it is. But that was sort of like my level of desire and entertainment. As Shanola asks, any advice on painting? Feel like I've seen improvements, but feel stuck at tabletop quality. Thanks for all the work and everything you put into it. Love the content. Okay, so my advice whenever anyone asks me a question like that, because it's a fairly open-ended question, right? It's broad. It doesn't specify where you feel like you could improve or how you feel. Like it just says you feel like you've plateaued. Is that every time you paint a miniature, you try to do something you've never done before. Whether it's a bit of lighting on a model, doing a different tone of skin. So I find that one very common thing that painters do when they paint miniatures is they have a way that they paint skin, and that's the only way that everyone's skin looks, right? There's like one skin tone to rule them all, and everybody you ever paint has the same skin tone. Of course, that's just not true in real life. Even Caucasians will have like 1,000 different skin tones between them. If you look at people of all different like Caucasian ethnicities, they can all look just as different as any other ethnicity. And so I think it's good even just to start there and try and paint a slightly different, try and paint tanned skin, you know what I mean? A Caucasian tan skin. Try and paint any kind of skin that you've never painted before. Try and do a 5 o'clock shadow on a beard, or change up the color of a guy's eyes. Try and paint eyes a different color. And I find that every time you do that, you either screw it up and you're not happy with it, you try and do it again until you get something that you're relatively happy with, or you nail it, like you figured a way of doing things is different, and then you become comfortable doing that. And you usually teach yourself something doing that. And I think that's a big important thing in painting, so that you never feel like you've plateaued, is you should try and do something, I think that's just true in life, try and do something that scares you every time you paint a miniature. And doing something that's a little bit scary, where you're not really sure how it's going to turn out, typically is the best way to learn anything. Or to at least have a new experience and decide that you're not happy with how that looks, and that you'll do it again in a different way next time, and then maybe you'll be happy with that time. And I think that's it. Like, that's the only way that you really eventually get better, is just by doing stuff that you're not sure. You start off and you go, I don't know if this is going to work. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Tobias Erickson asks, will you play more Heralds of Ruin kill teams now after the big update? I didn't even know there was a big update. But probably, Owen was just in here today saying, we should play some more Heralds of Ruin kill teams. So, good timing. We just played some, we each helped each other play some Frostgrave. He was around while I was filming the game that you're going to see today. And what we did was I just left the table set up, and then we kind of like helped each other play a couple games. So you'll see him play Dark Alchemy and me play Dark Alchemy all through the next couple weeks, month and a half or so. And yeah, Herald's of Ruin's a lot the same way. So I would say you probably definitely will, because he's got an eye for it right now. Doom Rider asks, have you heard of the game Darklands by Mearse Miniatures? I have not. It doesn't mean it's not great. It just means I haven't heard of it. I'll be honest, I don't spend a lot of time on the internet looking at miniatures these days, because when I'm on the internet, I'm usually answering your guys' questions or answering emails, or trying to get through the inbox on the Facebook page, or the messaging system on YouTube, and I don't have a lot of time to just kind of hang out and look at miniatures anymore. When I rode airplanes like 4 or 5 times a week working for a workshop, I had a lot more time to look at miniatures than I do raising 2 toddlers and managing a giant social media footprint apparently by myself. Oh, send me a link in the description, in the comments here, and I'll check them out. Did Not Leave a Name asks, would you consider doing a piece of ash in a podcast format, or potentially dual releasing them on YouTube as a podcast? If not, any plans for independent podcast? I've had plans for a podcast for a long time, and if you go on Podbean, you can even see I've registered a Podbean channel. And chances are I will get to it this year. The thing with podcasts are that before, they were a bit hard for me to record, because I need to record them when my kids are sleeping. And now my kids are both toddlers and a lot better sleepers than they were when one was an infant and one was a toddler. And they're also significantly less work because they sleep through the night and there's less 4 a.m. bottle feedings or whatever. So the chance of the podcast getting put together this year are far higher than they were last year when my son was still a baby. I mean, he's still a baby, he's like 1.5, but he's more sleep through the night, get up maybe, get changed, but not to like freak out and want food kind of a baby at this point. So yes, there's a very good chance of that. I know people love podcasts. I've literally I've listened to one podcast my whole life, so I feel bad talking about podcasts. And if you guys want to know what podcast it was Neil Fallon from Clutch was on Aisha Tyler's Guy on Girl, and I wanted to hear what those two would talk about, because it was just an incredibly entertaining conversation, and I wasn't disappointed. So if you ever want to hear a great interview of Neil Fallon, listen to Aisha Taylor talk about them. He talks about where like a lot of his songs come from and stuff, which was pretty great. And then there was one other interview with him that you guys should watch if you're interested, which was on YouTube, and it was kids interview bands, and it was this I think 11 or 12-year-old girl interviewing Neil Fallon, and his conversation about what it's like growing up to an 11 or 12-year-old girl is pretty amazing as he sits there just trying to figure out how he's going to talk to this girl about being in clutch. But yeah, no, I know people like listening to podcasts because they're heavily supported by phones now. So like iOS has the podcast app on your phone that literally just like it refreshes all of your current episodes of your podcast you haven't listened to, and you can listen to them in the car and stuff like that, so you're not chewing through your data as you would be if you just put the YouTube app on. And yeah, I've thought about doing the dual releases and stuff like that. I could do that, but if I did a podcast, I would want it to be about things I can't really do in a piece of ash, and that would be things like interviews. Although I have done some interviews, I usually do them as Witches Wonders, but doing interviews, talking to industry people, and just hanging out with people all over the world that you can hang out with, because that's the great thing about podcasting is you can sit and talk and record stuff online and not have to be in the same room with people. So I think with a visual medium like video, where you guys are hanging out with me and I can show you things and I can sort of physically interact with the camera, it's different from podcasting, where the opportunity there is to bring people from all over the world in, so you guys can hear from them and talk to them. And so I think keeping those two things separate just kind of makes sense. I'll probably keep doing that. So that's it. That's my last question for this month's A Piece of Ash. And we are done for another month. So if you didn't get your question out, actually I went through all of them, so you did get your question asked if you asked it, but if you want to ask me a question for next month, you should jump on the link below in the video description, and I will answer your questions in August from July. I've managed to get about 75% done, these Frostgrave minis, so I'm going to sit here and finish them up. Yeah, and you guys will hopefully see them in the next On the Paint table. You didn't see it on the paint table this week because it was a long weekend in Canada, and ironically Canada Day is also my mother-in-law's birthday, so it's a very busy weekend for me of like preparing barbecues and all kinds of outdoor stuff. So I didn't get to film it on the paint table. So you get it On the Paint table double header next week, where you'll see all kinds of stuff on Friday. Hopefully you guys will enjoy that. So we'll see you for another Piece of Ash next month. Until then, I'm Ash. Have a good night.